being a manager and being a leader are two different things. It's easy to become a manager because in India, I think as soon as you reach a certain experience,
I
people
don't want
start.
to code. I want to be a manager.
Exactly. What value a grad can offer now actually is very debatable now, because on one side, like you said, AI is actually come in. It started doing all the entry level, and there is obviously, if you look at all the latest research which is being done, it is much cheaper to employ Gen AI to build certain entry level software modules rather than hiring a junior software engineer himself. At the same time, would I need to hire 800 or 1000 graduates every year? No. I think that's where actually things are going to change, right? Because the volume of hiring in each IT company in India is going to reduce drastically, and that's going to impact the jobs for the grads.
One interesting aspect which is evolving is we now have job descriptions,
Mhm.
which clearly says what a person has to do with this title. Is coming in with maybe a specific skill set. This is going away because you don't really need jobs. You need to do tasks, which is a combination of different jobs, right? So it's more like a generalized skill now. You need to know everything to complete a task.
I'm a say 20 plus years experience engineer. If I try to compete against a 5 plus engineer, apply 5 plus years experience engineer and say, you know what, I and you are going to do the same thing. I will show you I write better code than you. Then you already failed.
So today we have Karthik as a
Hey.
guest, esteemed guest, because I've been I know him for a long while. I think long while now.
Yeah, we
As
go a long way back.
yeah, so I think somewhere uh, unknowingly you have been my mentor too. I don't
Yeah.
know whether you know it
I
because
well, I kind of sensed it, but
because uh, I don't know when it started, but yeah, even in the one thing I really like about you is the people management side. I think I have seen managers who are like on your face also always and trying to dictate a lot of things. But you are somebody I've seen who will get things done, maybe in a way which is like not regular like I see from a manager. I don't know how to even call it. Maybe you manipulate people.
well, it
So,
could. It sounds negative, but it's not
yeah,
really.
in a good way, maybe. It's negative, but
Yeah,
it's a
I
good
guess
way.
I would like to think about it as bringing out the best in people.
Yeah.
If you call it manipulation, then probably that's the way to put
But
it. But
like I said, in a good way, because I had started following because I pick up a lot of uh, good parts from a lot of people and then try to bring it in my way of working. I won't call leadership and everything because I'm a transform leader, maybe looking at you or even my previous bosses, right? So somewhere you have helped me transition into maybe an IC into a leader unknowingly. And now I realize maybe once you introduce yourself, your journey has been the other way around now. Like you've been a leader and then you're transformed yourself into maybe a individual contributor, but looking at the strategy of the organization, right? That's what I
yeah, the
understood.
technical strategy
Yeah.
and basically looking at taking the company into the domain of autonomous networks now. Since I am in the telecommunication domain, the idea is now to take the company into the next phase, which is autonomous networks. That's where most of my time has been recently, and I am transitioning from a people leader, people management kind of role into this role. Um, and I think, but again, it's not that actually you are far from leadership, right? I think you're always, I think if you have spent enough time in the industry and you work with people, still you need to, actually I need to work with people on a day-to-day basis,
Yeah.
right? And need to still get work done from the
And that's your
engineers.
core
So
strength too, right?
yeah.
Manipulating.
Yeah, you can call it manipulating, yes, but yeah, I think like I said, I think it's all about, for me, probably to cover this, just to round off on the people management aspect. I think I really love working with people,
Yeah.
right? And I think for me it has always been, and I'm a learner as well, right? For example, when I worked with you and when I started a team which on app development, which I had no idea about, because I was always a backend guy at that time when I started a team of, when I built a team of app developers. I kind of lent on the seniors quite a lot.
Yeah,
Like I had to trust the team, and that's how I think you kind of, when I start trusting the team and I learn from them, is when then I realize that what else I can help, right? Because you guys are all technically superior, and I had to figure out a way to get the best out of you without actually sounding like being a manager. And that's where I think the way I like to, like I said, getting the best out of people is always not easy. And I always say this to many people, that being a manager and being a leader are two different things. It's easy to become a manager because in India, I think as soon as you reach a certain experience,
I
people
don't want
start
to code. I want to be a manager.
exactly.
Yeah.
People start looking at you as being a man. Maybe they think that it's like a antithesis, right? Ideally speaking, a good, the best developer should go on to build the best systems and should go on to architect something much more larger than life, right? And innovate for the company. Whereas I feel that in Indian companies we often try to um, like I said, promote people wrongly,
Mm.
place them into roles which, like for example, people manager, and the person who has probably been coding all his life suddenly becomes a manager, manages people, and not necessarily that they are good managers. Some people might be good, like I said, but doesn't mean that they will be good managers, good leaders rather. They
Yeah.
can be managers but not leaders. And I think leadership is all about trusting your people. And I think that when you get that, when you are on a pedestal of leadership, right, you are able to see things which your team cannot,
Mm.
right? And you get access to the executive management, you get access to a lot of other things in the company which your team members are not getting access to, and it's your responsibility to make sure that you balance it out, right? You make sure you become like a wall when required, and you
Mm.
pass on the information as well when required. When the difficult time comes, you protect your team, and the times are good, you actually pass on the
I have
credits to the
seen
team, and
I
that's
have
where.
seen that side of it too. Like I still remember when I was in US, somebody was really troubling me, and then I got a call from you, and then I was more complaining at that time maybe, and then you said, "Don't worry, just focus on what you need to do, and I'll take care of the remaining." Right? This was something also some I why it remains with me is because I was seeing a lot of traits which I can learn. Like how do you make sure that the person is focused on what he's doing, avoiding the distraction. You could have just told anything else, like, or you could have brought the other person and then created a different kind of situation for everyone, but you managed it in a different way. So what I'm trying to come to is that something inherently within you, or you learned it up reading some, because whatever right now you mentioned is very relevant, because I've been reading a lot about what the leadership should be like, where you enable people instead of trying to know everything. If you know everything, you are an IC because you are trying to solve problems for everyone, right? But as a leader, you are trying to make sure that you are leveraging the potential of the people around and then trying to solve a lot of things, right? So is that inherently coming from you, or you all learned it up?
I think it's partly, I would say, my personality, the way actually I've been brought up, and the way actually I've seen people around me,
Hmm.
and partly I've kind of picked it up from when I was actually starting off as a graduate engineer, and how my managers kind of influenced me also actually plays a big part.
Hmm.
Because like I said, inherently I'm a person who actually always tries to see the positive side of people,
Hmm.
because I think negative side everybody sees, right? And I think I myself, when I was growing up, um, and when growing up, and I was an introvert as well to a large extent.
Hmm.
Usually, people never used to
You
appreciate
being
the
an
thing.
introvert, I can't.
I was,
I can't.
and I evolved as well, right? And I
Okay.
evolved, and like I said, I think when you actually start to see the positive things in people, and not, like I said, people are never good or bad. It's the situation that make them, and
Hmm.
you need to find a way to see the positive side of people, bring out the best in them. And like I said, when I joined as a graduate engineer in my company, the first company I joined, it was chaotic. It was a very big IT service company, and it was people were recruited like cattle, right? It's like you actually have a training batch which is probably 800, 1,000 in size, and there are so many people. How do you really stand out in such a huge
Hmm.
set of people, right? And when especially in a graduate engineer, that's where I think my company, the first company, really did a good job in identifying the potential in people and making sure that they give you enough rope to basically
Mm.
you can do well. That's what actually I kind of learned as well. So like I said, I make sure that I get the best out of people, of course, and also actually make sure that it's not like I don't really understand the negative side of people. I do, that's important, but I focus on the positive. And obviously I do give feedback. One thing about me also is I've learned that actually the best way to handle people is being very straightforward.
Yeah.
You got to be very straightforward with them, and make sure that if you're really, and of course appreciate people as well. I think if you, because like I said, I always had felt underappreciated in my life. Probably that's because,
Mm.
like I said, I started my job in a very big company. It was really hard to make a difference, right? And sometimes you actually feel that you've done really good, and you don't get any appreciation, and then I know that feels bad, right? Because you think you've achieved something which is remarkable, but people don't really appreciate it. That's one of the things which I then decided that whatever, celebrate the small victories, right? That's very important. That's where I decided that any small victories in my team I kind of appreciate, I celebrate with the team and make sure people are happy about it. That's pretty much, I mean, I try to keep it simple, like I said.
Mm.
And if there is any feedback, I directly give the feedback. Me, right? I'm very direct. I really
Yeah,
don't actually hold back on any feedback as
you
well. So
don't really. And also, one big thing I also visualize now is that you don't really differentiate between, let's say, a contractor, because I was more on contract, yeah, along with my brother. So you did not really see a difference between, let's say, a contractor, because otherwise, I have seen that. I won't call it as stepson kind of a treatment which is given to a contractor, but you are looking again at people and what they can bring to your table, right? So which
that's
is the
very,
main thing.
it's very interesting point, because I see a lot of people still doing that. When you have hired contractors for a reason.
Mm,
I think you probably don't have the skill set in your team, right? You need contractors maybe for a specific time.
mm,
Um, B, I think you probably don't want to have that person for a long duration,
yeah,
right? But if you actually don't treat the contractors on par with the permanent employees, you're not going to get the best out of them.
yeah,
And if they are going to feel isolated, they're not going to again produce the best results for you. And why would you not trust the contract? I mean, I think everybody uses trust in a very wrong way.
mm,
For example, even in your case, I think there are some people who probably initially thought that, what, this person has to earn my trust to really for me to give substantial project. It doesn't work that way, right? You actually hired and most of the contractors we hire are all experienced people coming from with a lot of experience, and they have spent a lot of time in the industry doing similar stuff. So it's nothing about, and you can't afford this term. Like I said, trust is misused quite a lot. If you're gonna spend 6 months with a contractor to give him menial jobs and then assess his capability and then give him a better project, it doesn't work, right?
yeah,
And you're losing money, and the contractor might also leave. So I think you need to treat them the same. For me, I think a particular engineer is an engineer, right? Doesn't matter contractor or permanent. The relationship that you build are real, right? A permanent or a contractor employee doesn't matter,
yeah.
and that's important as well.
Yeah, that's a big lesson for me too, because until then, even I was thinking like, now that perception has changed for me too. Like, because again, I think some of the traits I have understood from you, like, okay, you're looking more from everybody, like what best can you leverage from that person, right? But I also know that I've given you a tough time too, uh, because expectation as such from, even because again, I had signed up specifically for a purpose, then you were also supporting that. But I think within an organization sometimes it does not work well, and then I think a lot of questions were raised, but you were still backing a lot, which was really comment. I would say that was a real big support system too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the skill sets were real, right? Because I
Yeah.
could see what you are bringing to the table,
Hmm.
and whenever I used to pose actual problems to you, you were always helpful, and you came out and solved them.
I would say my brother more than me, because he was he was bringing in the right kind of talent. But yeah, I
And then
could
architecturally,
contribute.
I
Yeah,
think you were definitely, I would say, very well equipped, right?
yeah,
And I think that was, like I said, I think, and cut to current, right? Because what we were talking about is probably like 7 8 years before,
yeah,
where AI and Gen AI and everything was not as evolved, right? So I think even now, even after all the evolution which we are undergoing, I think architecture skill set are still, solution architecture and system architecture are still skills that
mm,
are still not found in large quantities.
mm.
And that's where I think we need such people, right? We need people who are at that level to really come and help solve problems or even build big complex systems.
Yeah, I think even that's what has helped me even now. Like that skill set, sticking to my core strength, even coming into a leadership is still helping, because one of the bigger problems that we have is like you have managers, like you said, who are not leaders, because they are there to maybe micromanage, which I think it's very difficult to work with the current gen. Maybe that they are not really looking for somebody who needs to manage them, but yeah, work along with them is what they are looking for, right? So now, how has work transformed for you? Like, I know that when we were working together, when I was reporting to you at that time, you were more. I did see that a lot of firefight was what you were involved with again, protecting the teams from really
Yeah.
making that create giving that visibility of what's really going on. But I know that it was more of direct cause coming from people where it had to be solved right now.
From the executives.
Yeah, so, so how has it changed now? What is the kind of work that you're doing?
um, in fact, I'm right now, like I said, I am moving away from when I joined my current organization 3 years back. I joined in again as a people leader,
Hmm.
engineering leader. You call it engineering manager, engineering director, whatever name you want to give that, right? And my job was to build a team. And basically, it is a global capability center,
Hmm.
right? Wherein I was supposed to build an engineering team just capable of uh, developing uh, developing and building and managing telecom network, right? And that job was actually good for me initially because I could leverage my core strength, my
Hmm.
contacts in the industry, build a team, create the capability in house for the company. But again, very soon I realized again that I am not really developing my skill sets, and that's something which I always felt that it's very important, because as a people manager or engineering leader, sometimes what tends to happen that you are so caught up in all the firefighting and all
Hmm.
that you said, that you probably tend to focus very less on your own personal development and your skill upliftment. And that's what I started feeling. And right, even when we worked together, at some point we felt the same thing too. We've decided that what, we are not doing much, we are not learning anything new, we are just focusing on the bio activities, firefighting, and we're not learning anything new. That's what happened to me recently as well, that after 3 years of being in a engineering leadership slash people management um, kind of a role, I kind of now transitioning into a technical strategy kind of a role, where my role is now more focused on, like I said, taking the company into the next phase of evolution. I work for a telecom company, right? Telecom
Hmm.
operator, who obviously, and the struggle is real in telecom industry, because telecom industry is one of the industries which, it's like this, right? You actually telecom companies lay the roads, create a very good infrastructure,
For the future.
and make sure that the roads are very clean and you can access them very fast. So it means they create all your data pipelines to make sure that you have very fast internet browsing speed on my mobile and everything. But money is made by somebody else,
Hmm.
right? Because the over the top application make more money than the telecom companies which actually make the infrastructure. So it's very hard for a telecom company to sustain without being autonomous.
Okay.
If you have to employ thousands of people to manage the network, it's going to be really difficult now to, your bottom line is not going to be looking very good. And there is definitely very less opportunities for the top line as well, right? There are new revenue sources, not much new revenue sources coming in in the telecom industry for operators.
Hmm.
Geo in India actually has been trying to get into so many different things, right?
Okay. Is
But
that
still
the
doesn't
reason?
mean that they are getting they're not able to diversify their revenues, right? You only have B2C or B2B, and you actually can either sell enterprise networks, or you can probably basically sell your SIM cards and your data plans to people. And at some point, like I said, your top line is going to stagnate.
Stagnant. Is that happening? Like it's stagnant now?
Not probably in India, because India has a lot of new subscribers getting added every day. But in companies like Australia or US or Europe, pretty much I think it's a stage where telecom operators have no new subscribers getting added as
Hmm.
fast as they want. The growth is not much, and there is heavy competition as well, right? There are many telecom operators trying to come up with lucrative offers. The prices of data is coming down. The data plans which used to cost like $80 in Australia is probably now costing $50 because of the competition. They have to keep it, real for the people to
So
really
is the
buy.
revenue based on the number of connections or subscribers? For
Yeah, I mean it is. Yeah, I mean to an extent is it's also number of connection, what services you offer to the customer, what
Hmm.
service they buy. Like I said, B2C is a very small piece of the pie. If you look at the what telecom operators can do,
Hmm.
but because the telecom networks, the money they have spent on the telecom networks, building so much of complex networks, should ideally be they should be able to sell even enterprise networks, private 5G, industrial IoT. There are so much opportunities, but thing is that our adoption of industrial IoT or private 5G have been very slow, and that's where I think they are more focused on the consumer at the moment, and they're not really, like I said, not able to add too much to the top line.
Hmm.
The only way they can really make profit is by cutting down the operational costs, and that's where I think that's what autonomous networks is going to do for telecom companies. That's what
Okay.
I'm focused on. So how do we do that? How do we plan? How do we execute? What is the tech stack? Because there is so much of different kind of tech stack available to deploy autonomous networks. um,
You're more working on strategizing the tech stack required for the future.
yeah, I mean you can say that. And also, how should what should change in the core telecom networks as well.
Hmm.
For example, how do you make sure network assurance is autonomous? How do you make sure the planning is actually autonomous? Because you have to plan the network, where to deploy your radio stations, how to actually optimize the available bandwidth, and so on. So all this actually is part of that journey.
Okay. So maybe three things as objectives and on top of my mind to start with, maybe, which is because again it's pointed to all the professionals across entry level, mid level engineers, and then coming to maybe leaders. I won't call managers, or even managers who are at their brink of maybe entering or even at the last phase of their career, who might be um, maybe disturbed with a lot of things which is going around right now. First part of it is the global geopolitical turmoil which is happening with Trump getting in, then disrupting a lot of things. I don't know how much is it is going to have an impact, but what I really see is the world order is maybe changing. But again, is it going to have an impact? No one knows. Second part of it is about the disruption of AI itself. I am seeing it in the day to day, but I am more seeing it at an individual level. But I don't really see an infrastructure evolving there. But yeah, it could be another threat to the maybe careers itself, right? How it is evolved for a lot of us. Third part is about ageism, which is people aging, not upskilling or meeting the expectations of what organization might be needing, right? So these are the three core areas where maybe we can discuss. You can
Yep,
give your views, and then I can
sure.
also come with my thoughts of it. Yep. So, what do you think? The first part of geopolitical.
Yeah, it's a very, I think if you look at Indian IT, we are speaking mostly in IT
Yeah,
context, right?
very
Because
much.
obviously the tariffs is going to impact other sectors like manufacturing and agriculture and all those stuff.
Even before that,
Um,
yeah, tariff is one part.
mhm.
Even the way, let's say, because what I realized is after everything, once Trump came in, big thing what I'm seeing is the world order as such. We are seeing, we were calling ourselves maybe the third largest economy, superpower, and everything. But then what I'm really seeing is that this one country is what is dictating the whole region across, right? That they are dictating maybe even let's say how uh, Zelensky was treated when he was in the Oval Office. The
And that has
same,
always been the case. I
yeah.
think it's you can choose to accept it or deny it, but definitely I think still US constitutes for, I mean, to India as well. US constitutes 70% of all our IT outsourcing. Right,
Mm,
it's out of the 200 odd billion dollars that India actually made in revenue in 2024. 70% for the US, and it's like that even for China or any other, for Vietnam or any other country which is reliant on US. Obviously, US is going to be dictating the flow of or the world order in many ways. And even before, they used to think that they used to always. I think one thing about US is that they are always going to be in that position where they think they can dictate.
is that
And
the reality or is it not?
well, in some cases, it is the reality. For example, if they decide that the IT outsourcing, if they actually decide they go to WTO, right now India is pretty much protected by this
Mm,
tariff. At least the Indian IT industry is protected because we have the GATS agreement, right? And WTO obviously specifies that the agreement we have is specifies that we don't need to pay taxes, or we are not really under the tariffs
mm,
when it comes to IT outsourcing. But if tomorrow actually Trump decides that no, there has to be tax which is going to be paid by
mm,
the company which are outsourcing, then so be it. And obviously, we'll need to actually do something to really come out of such a situation. And I
okay.
think it's real. I think in some cases, like I said, when it comes to dictating the economy of the world, I think US still maintains a pole position. Things might be changing in some ways. Some of the other countries might, like China, has always been a constant force, the counter force to US in many ways, right? For example, even in AI, US built OpenAI in a couple of years. Maybe China builds it in 6 to 8 months for a fraction of the cost. That's the power of China, right? But again, when it comes to the world order, I think China is very far from dictating it. It's going to be US for many years to come, I feel. And
Mm,
like I said, you can accept it or deny it, but the impact is real. So we can only try to handle the situation better.
yeah,
I don't think we can, no.
because it was an eye opener to me looking at all the news around, because I realized Germany does not have a military of its own. Europe
I think
is mostly,
there's only
yeah.
NATO for a lot of the European
So then
countries.
everyone is rethinking now. So that's the reason I said world order is changing. US is not in alignment with maybe NATO countries. It's more directly in a conflicting situation with China. Maybe that will adding some kind of advantage for India, but I don't know in what.
Yeah, it is very, I would say, unless and until India suddenly overnight becomes a manufacturing leader, it's unlikely that we are going to reap the benefits of the trade war between US and China, because I mean, industrial revolution India has been lacking for many years. We are not, especially in the niche sectors, semiconductors, we are nowhere there.
Yeah.
We're not really building any reliable electronics which can be used across the globe. Automobiles, we are there to an extent. I think the Tatas and the Mahindras have started exporting to other countries as well, but it's far and it's like not really very structured, well structured, I would say, right?
Mm.
And even if you look at agriculture, there are very few products which are really exported to US. I think we probably are limited to probably mangoes and dairy, maybe specific dairy like ghee
Yeah.
and other products. So I think, it's going to be very difficult for India to, because there was no platform which was laid out to take at such an advantage, right? To take advantage of such a situation, there is no platform yet in India.
Mm.
So I don't think we can take very good advantage. I think we should probably stick to our core strengths, which is IT and IT outsourcing right now, and make sure that that doesn't get impacted.
Mm.
That, I think, if that gets impacted, and I think India is going to see it's going to be a larger impact. And I think the tariffs themselves, even though they are not going to directly impact IT outsourcing in India, it's going to have an indirect impact because the US companies, like I said, which is US is 70% of India's market, India's IT market. And then if US decides to, most of the companies in US are now going to decide to cut down on spending.
Hmm.
In the short term, they're either going to cut down spending or they're going to calibrate their spending. So it means that because IT is not their only spend, right?
And why are they doing it?
Because of the tariffs, because
Oh, they
once
want to
tariffs,
recalibrate based on the tariff
yeah, because they IT is not the
regulations.
only spend for them, right? There's also supply chain. For example, if you look at huge supermarkets like Walmart, which has to now look at their whole supply chain, depending on which country they source from,
Hmm.
and then actually they have to decide how much they really want to spend for IT. So obviously, in short term, there might be some issue in that
Hmm.
in demand, but I think medium term that should settle down. And I think, like I said, there might be some indirect impacts. And once they decide to calibrate their spend and diversify or consolidate the vendors, that's where I see that there could be some challenges for some of the Indian outsourcing companies.
Hmm.
And other there on the other side, we also have problem with H1Bs, right?
Yeah.
The rejection rate of H1B has increased from 6% to 24%, and India constitutes about 60 or 70% of the overall H1B visas which were being provided.
Hmm.
So obviously, companies like Infosys or TCS or Wipros of India can't really now afford to send people for reasonable. Basically,
So it will be more number of rejections.
yeah, I mean the rejections have increased already. The
Hmm.
H1B rejections. It means they'll have to either drop the projects, right, or they have to probably hire somebody locally. And if they hire locally in US, it's not going to be really
Yeah.
affordable, right? It's not affordable for Indian IT companies to really hire people in the US and get the projects done.
So overall, that's the strategy too. That you are trying to get more work done from, let's say, US itself,
Yeah,
and that's
that's what actually Trump and
hmm,
others want to happen, right?
yeah.
That's what they want to increase the employability in US, where the US people get more opportunities and eventually, kind of like you said, the world order changes. But I guess the in medium term, I think Indian IT industry will survive. Though short term, you might see some shocks here and there, and there are the shocks of the tariff declaration, even though it's not significantly impacting the IT industry in India, but it has already started to impact the stock price of companies like
Yeah,
Accenture and all the stuff, right? Accenture
across right now,
across, yeah,
15%. Yeah.
yeah, because even a company as big as Accenture, even though they are seeing growth, the stock prices are coming down because of the uncertainty,
Hmm.
right? Whenever there's uncertainty in what's going to happen the next financial year, will government contracts, because government IT spend is huge, right? US federal spend on IT is very huge.
Hmm.
It does outsource to a lot of companies, and when there is uncertainty in that, obviously the markets tend to react, and the
But
stock
these are
prices
all
actually
going to
show
be
that.
very short term.
Yeah, I think it's going to be short term. In the medium term, I think Indian IT industry is going to survive. We have been resilient, but I think the real problem for Indian IT is not exactly coming from
Yeah.
the tariff.
So then that's the second topic we are entering into. First
Exactly.
topic
Yeah.
we ticked, and then that's really not a problem as such, because again, India will survive that. But then coming to the second topic, which is a giant among this, which is AI, I guess that's what you're pointing to, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.